this morning, didn't recognize the man in the mirror. Then I laughed and I said, oh silly me, that's just me. Then I proceeded to brush some stranger's teeth, but they were my teeth, and I was weightless, just quivering like some leaf come in the window of a restroom. I couldn't tell you.
Kurt Weill was an American forklift truck driver until he started to become a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist and record producer. He was a guitarist for the band The War on Drugs from 2005 to 2009, and then launched a solo career towards the end of that. Sometimes he is billed as Kurt Weill and the Violators. The Violators are his backing band, and I think have probably been with him for the albums even when they haven't been credited. His first solo record was a collection of homemade recordings in 2008, and he's released 8 studio albums since then. Hi, my name's Dan. So this is Kurt Weill's 6th solo album, and it's my first time listening to it. I have come across him before. I reviewed one of his other albums, Smoke Rings for My Halo, on my blog, which was an existence that I had before this video existence that I have these days. And he's backed by the Violators in this album, and particularly of note is Ron Lazzo, if I've pronounced that right, who is played a lot of instruments and is co-producer, and from what I understand is Kurt Weill's great buddy. So I just want to address his name. It sounds like it's one of those made-up punk names like Johnny Rotten or Sid Vicious. Kurt Weill is not. It actually is his real name. Also, he's not to be confused with Kurt Weill, who was a German composer who worked with Bertolt Brecht on various things, but including the Threepenny Opera and their most famous song, probably Mac the Knife. Kurt Weill, in that case, is spelled Weill, and the German pronunciation of W is V. Yeah, he's Kurt Weill. It sounds the same, but it's spelt differently, and he's a completely different person. So this is singer-songwriter stuff. It's kind of indie rock. It's quite laid back and laconic at times. His voice quite often reminded me of Lou Reed, both in the tone of his voice, so that's kind of the harmonic elements of the timbre that's in there, but also in the way that he sings. And there were some songs in particular where he was kind of sliding out of the singing into almost speech, which was a very kind of Lou Reed kind of way of approaching stuff. He was born too late. He could have worked well in the 70s. Maybe actually it works well now, though, I have to say. There's also a kind of Bob Dylan-ness to it, I would say. So musically, again, it reminds me of Lou Reed at times, but it's quite varied. It feels quite disparate in some ways, so the sound that's in there. Quite often when you get an album, you've got a kind of consistent sound to it, because it's all been recorded in the same studio and kept a lot of the same settings, I guess, for things. And this was recorded over several different studios and lots of sessions, I understand. And so that kind of explains why it's got this kind of more of a piecemeal feel to it. There is a focus on a guitar here. He is a guitarist. There's at least 2 tracks that feature banjo quite heavily. So I understand banjo was his first instrument. Apparently his dad bought him a banjo and he was gutted that it wasn't a guitar, but he learned to play it like a guitar. But maybe he started to like the sound. I quite like the sound of a banjo occasionally. Yeah. Sometimes it's got a kind of homebrew, lo-fi feel to it, not in terms of the quality of the recording, but in terms of kind of the approach to the music. There's at least one track where I felt like there was a kind of hesitancy in stuff, or maybe it was dramatic pausing. I don't know. The lyrics are nice. I felt it was quite nicely put together. Sometimes it's quite conversational, like "That's Life," though, which is the name of one of the tracks. So he does have this thing of doing lyrics that are a little bit more kind of casually conversational in feel, rather than feeling like they're crafted poetic lyrics, but in a way that I'm sure is still quite crafted. It feels a bit like slices of life in terms of the content, but it feels like slices of a fairly passive life, a life where things are happening to the person. Um, so overall, I quite enjoyed it. It has a feel and an identity of its own, despite the comparisons that I've made to other people. I think that it sits alongside other contemporary singer-songwriters, so people like Bill Callahan, sometimes known as Smog, and others of that ilk. It kind of, yeah, it wouldn't be out of place on a shelf next to them. So yeah, it's all right. Quite enjoyed it. What do you think? I'd love to know, so please do tell me by leaving me a comment down there in the comments box. And that's it for me for now.
Chinese charms and Will tanked in Burbank, strumming unsuccessfully, but more so just pressing keys. And hey, Jack of diamonds, I'll jack a horse. Hey man, I believe I'm floating